Hey everybody, it's Alessandro from Innovate with Impact, hashtag small relief. I'm here with Alex Osterwalder today. Hey Alex.
Pleasure to be here.
I'm super honored to have you here on this interview today, and I'm super excited about the discussion we're about to have. We basically don't need much introduction because people that have read your books know you, but you do a lot of amazing work. You're an author, you're a speaker, you're a consultant, you're an entrepreneur. You've recently published a book, The Invincible Company, which I'm personally a big fan of, which we'll be talking about a little bit more today as well. But before we get started, if you don't mind, quickly introduce yourself a little bit more and what it is that you have been working on.
So my name is Alex Osterwalder. I co-founded a company called Strategyzer. We do technology-enabled services, mainly for large companies around the world, the big giants like MasterCard, GE, and so on. But the stuff we make, the business model canvas, value proposition canvas, the online courses that we have, they're really for all business people, all the way from startups to large corporates and executives. And basically what we try to do and what I'm passionate about is just to help people do better work. And that really goes across the business world, mainly for strategic and innovation topics. So that's what I do. And I happen to publish some books every now and then together with the team, always very visual books. So I have a lot of fun doing that.
I think, we were talking about this a little bit before. I think the visuals that you guys are producing are super powerful, and the tools that you're providing make a lot of sense, and they kind of help you cut through a lot of the issues and then focus on what's really important.
So I see yeah, absolutely. And just to build on that, I see the visual aspect not as just, packaging or to make things look nice. It actually really creates a shared language. If you have a team working around a visual tool, that could be the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, or even test cards, it really helps you get a shared understanding. It helps you structure. So the visual aspect, at the beginning, I underestimated that, is really this idea of a shared language. It's extremely important, and it will allow you to do things a lot more efficiently.
You're basically getting everybody in the same boat, right? No matter what background they come from and what they're dealing with.
And you focus, so often think of these meetings you've had, and then somebody talks about technology, somebody talks about product, somebody talks about strategy, somebody talks about marketing. When we don't structure a session with visual tools and strong, facilitation, strong meeting structure, people are all over the place. And then you get lost and the meeting's over and you don't have results, right? So that's why we believe the visual tools are not just a gimmick, they actually help you get structure, get focus, and ultimately to produce outcomes. So really getting everybody around a table. And sometimes, even for yourself to structure your ideas. So turning an idea into a business model, into a value proposition, that is hard without some kind of structure. So we try to make structure to help people make sense of the world and to have better conversations from the startups all the way to the big companies.
Absolutely. And I cannot agree more. It's all about, so when I'm using these tools, it's getting people together, and you have this extreme massive element of like connectivity, right? So, I mean, whether you do it in person or you do it digitally, or like you said, you do it in any way, shape or form, it kind of helps you to connect, and it helps you get everybody on board and on the same page. And which is something I think is probably extremely, or definitely really important in the time that we live in today. And that leads me to my, next question, which is essentially, how has your life changed over the past couple of months, and how have your collaborations and your partnerships changed? What has been happening?
So for me personally, I don't travel at the moment, right? So it's actually a good thing to a certain extent. My speaking business, I don't give any talks or so. That's maybe the negative side, but I have a lot more time to, focus on specific things. With our team, we're now, building virtual master classes. So it's an opportunity. I see the crisis as something very difficult to deal with. We need to deal with it as, a company, as an entrepreneur, as a leader. I need to deal with it. And, as a person with a family and relatives and friends. But at the same time, besides the hard parts, I really like seeing this as an opportunity. So it's gave me a lot of time to, focus on the team and create new stuff with the team in lightning speed, because you need to pivot your, your focus, your prioritization. So I could invest a lot of time in the team and into the new things that we're doing specifically for this kind of context. So I'm enjoying that part. But you know what makes me a little bit sad, of course, is that some companies are really suffering, and I'm trying to help as much as possible. People around me are trying to help as much as possible. So I do think there are opportunities with all of the hard stuff that comes with a crisis like this, and we're only at the beginning, right? I think this is 12, 18 months, it's only starting, but we need to see the opportunities because we can't change the context anyway. So no reason to complain. Best thing is to act, you know, and to turn the current context into the best thing possible, however hard or easy it is. And some companies are really benefiting from it, anywhere in the medical devices. And so, you know, obviously the Netflixes of the world, you know, that's great, a great place to be. But even they are struggling, you know, take Zoom, they have to scale up. Take some of these online tools, they have to scale up. So it's not just, you know, those that are on the negative side that are struggling, those on the positive side are struggling as well.
So throughout all the interviews that I've done, I keep like being reminded of this saying, you know, we're being handed lemons and let's start making lemonade. And, you know, I mean, obviously talking about your tools, it kind of helps you with that, right? Because, you know, bringing people together, focus and all that good stuff. So it is kind of like this, you know, like full-fledged modules that you have to kind of get in and start making that change. On that note, do you maybe have like some key advice that you're seeing with companies right now? What's like, let's say you're talking to some of the companies that are really struggling right now. What, from your perspective, is the best possible advice you can give?
Yeah, so let me actually draw that. I do a lot of things visually, so I'll quickly share, you know, my iPad. So, you know, any kind of idea, entrepreneurial idea, innovation, or in this case, you know, you could say pivot, that you might have to go through as a company, starts with an idea or many ideas, and you want to turn that into a real kind of opportunity. I'll just draw a kind of building here as a symbol for business, right? This could be a $10 million opportunity, it could be a $1 billion opportunity, it doesn't matter. But, you know, we need to kind of accept this is a messy journey. Every entrepreneur and innovator knows this is a messy journey to go from here to here. And what's important is to actually accept that in this phase, uncertainty is very high. Okay, now uncertainty in general is very high at the moment, uncertainty and risk because of COVID-19, but in any kind of entrepreneurial journey. So our only task is to actually reduce risk and uncertainty as entrepreneurs. And the danger is right now that some companies, they say, I'm going to make a big bet here. I'm going to, you know, bet all the money on one idea. That's a bad thing to do. What you really want to do is continue to work, you know, like entrepreneurship and innovation works, do a quick test. Maybe you talk to potential customers. Maybe you do a email campaign to see who's interested, or you do a kind of click campaign with a certain price, right? Price range, and you see what people will like or not like. And mostly, with a lot of things, you'll be wrong, which means you'll actually reduce risk and uncertainty with these experiments down here, because you will learn what works and what doesn't. And if you're really doing something new, a lot of it won't work. So I always say the biggest skill of an entrepreneur is to be humiliated 100 times until you get it right? But when you actually learn what doesn't work and what works, you're constantly reducing risk and uncertainty. And the more you know, the more you can invest into what actually works. So now that is how innovation and entrepreneurship works in general. I think there's a risk now because people want to move fast or have to move fast because they're running out of money. They don't want to fire people. They're not doing the testing, but you have to, right? The only difference here is that, I'm trying to change to my eraser. The only difference here is that you have a gun to your head because you're running out of cash faster, which means you just need to test faster. This testing and adaptation phase is faster. And that's where the tools really help. If you shape your ideas very quickly, sketch them out, business model canvas, value proposition canvas, you will be much more aligned. Very quick testing with a structured approach, measuring all of the risks. You will be able to do the same thing very fast. And that's why those companies who've already started working like this before have a huge advantage. And the one thing I'd give as an advice, because I see a lot of mistakes there, is when you shape your idea, before you go here into testing, draw this business model canvas, Okay, Google it if you don't know it. And then you use that, not to say, oh, this is a great idea that I can execute. You use that to define the risks underlying your ideas. We call this the hypothesis. And you basically have 4 types of hypothesis, 4 types of risks here in uncertainty. The first part is what we call desirability here. And it was what we call the front stage of the business model canvas, desirability. Do people actually want it? Okay, what you're offering, and can you deliver it to the market? The backstage here is what we call feasibility. Can we build it? Can we manage the patents, et cetera, et cetera? And then down here, we have viability. Can we earn more money from it than we spend? Because sometimes people do pricing experiments, that's great, but do you know how much your cost structure is, right? And then the last one that I like to add here is around it, you know, adaptability. Is this the right moment to launch something from a macro perspective, infrastructure, et cetera? And that is then what you go and test here. Mm-hmm. And the more you learn down here, this curve here, for all of these desirability, feasibility, viability, and adaptability, the more evidence you bring to the table, the more you know an idea is going to work. And it doesn't mean because you have to go faster now, you might be running out of cash, that you shouldn't do this. You just need to adapt to the new context and do this a lot faster. So the process doesn't change at all. What changes is obviously the speed of execution. So I see some companies that think, oh, now I can do a shortcut here, but you can't, right? Because otherwise, you're just going to maximize the risk of investing in something that nobody wants and that you can't scale from a business model point of view. Because success is very easy, or very, you know, let me share this again. Let's see if I can go back to this. What are the ingredients of success? It's very simple. You need actually 3 things. Success in innovation and entrepreneurship means I need to create a value proposition, and I'll draw the value proposition canvas here, a value proposition that creates value for customers. Sounds trivial, but that's the first thing we need to figure out, something they really care about. But here's the thing. Most or many entrepreneurs and innovators I meet, they think great product equals success. No, it doesn't, because you can go bankrupt with a great product. Think of Kodak. They had a wonderful product. They even invented the digital camera. They went bankrupt.
Absolutely.
But what they didn't have was a business model. So the second thing you need to add to the mix is a business model. I'll draw the business model canvas here that allows you to capture the value, create, deliver, and capture value. So here you focus on value for your organization. Here you focus on value for customer. Okay, customer, here org. And then the last thing, if you've tested and validated this, you still need world-class execution skills. World-class execution. What does that mean? That means good project management, right? Team aligned, leadership skills. It's not one or the other, it's all 3. And that's what makes innovation and entrepreneurship so hard. And sometimes people just focus on this and they execute in a world-class style something that doesn't work. Think of, I just read a little bit about Quibi. You might know, $1 billion investment, or said, I think $2 billion investment for a short video platform. And then now they're blaming COVID-19 for their failure. The failure is that they built something that nobody wants. So they didn't test here value proposition or business model. They went straight from business plan to execution. And that's the problem here. This is the business plan world where you draw beautiful curves that look great. You make great PowerPoints and you go straight into the wall. So you need these first 2 here. You need to test and validate your value proposition and business model before you go to execution. And if you don't do that, unfortunately, some entrepreneurs and innovators still don't do that, then you usually go straight into the wall. You can get lucky, but it's pretty rare.
No, absolutely. In the segment study, which is showing, where do you feel like from, the years of your experience, where do you feel like are the most mistakes happening? Is it in the very beginning with the value proposition canvassing and the desirability? Is it later on? Because as we both know, in most business contexts, presentations are being built right away. So we go straight into the solution space, no idea if the desirability is really there. But what is your experience with that?
So my experience would be a couple of things, right? But if we take the startup world, this brings me a little bit to the ideas in our new book. It's that here, people do not focus enough on the business model, right? That's number one. And many entrepreneurs and innovators, they start building something too quickly. So if we go back to this little drawing here, they say, oh, I need to test. I'm going to build a product. You don't need to build a product here to test. So what you really want to do first is test jobs, pains, and gains, test many different things without building something before you start building something here. So the two mistakes are, people don't think business model, and I think it's harder and harder to compete on product, price, and technology. It's a losing game. You can't stay ahead just with technology innovation, product innovation. It's practically impossible. So you need to build superior business models, and we show that in our new book. And the second one is, when you test, don't build too quickly. So those are the two big mistakes in the startup world. And in the corporate world, I draw this very quickly, and this goes for large and small corporations. I do see both. When you have a company, you have a business model, basically, your world is split into two. Exploiting what you have, that means managing your business model and making it better and better. And that companies are not too bad at, this efficiency innovation. But what you also need to do is explore. That's the world of ideas. Works more like startups. Mm-hmm. And these are not the same things. Different processes, different metrics. So what many companies do is they apply the rules of exploit, of managing, to exploration, which is not management, it's entrepreneurship. And guess what? Rest in peace, all good ideas get killed by business plans, etc. You can't use the culture and metrics, even skills from over here, right? This is the world of entrepreneurship. So those, I would say, are the three big mistakes. Mm-hmm. Starting here, people don't distinguish between exploit, explore. And then zooming into this here, people don't, when they explore, really focus enough on the business model. So they work on innovations that won't give you a lasting competitive advantage. And then the third one, when people test, they actually start building way too quickly, which means they're spending a lot of money on building something when they should first test and then start building the right thing. Mm-hmm. Those are the three big mistakes that I see from the field. And yeah. Some of them, I've done them myself. So a lot of self-learning. So again, what I like to say is you need to look stupid 100 times until you look smart. And I can guarantee you, I looked stupid probably 1,000 times until I look smart every now and then.
I will happily join you on that front. Absolutely. Looked stupid many times, but learned a lot in the process. And I think this is really important as well, right?
What I would add to that, and here's the thing, we see these successful innovators and entrepreneurs of the cover of magazines, and then we think, wow, that's aspirational. What we don't see is they went through a lot of mistakes and they did a lot of things wrong, and they were part, maybe before they became founders, they were part of a startup. They learned. It's a profession. Innovation and entrepreneurship is a profession, and you get better at it over time. I like to make the analogy with the medical profession. You don't get to become a surgeon and snip it on people after, just having done 1 or 2 workshops. You actually go through medical school to learn anatomy, physiology, then you start snippeting on dead bodies, then you do your internship, right? So it's a long process of learning. And there are tools and there are processes. And in entrepreneurship, it's the same thing. It's a profession. What will always remain, and to a certain extent, surgery is probably in the same domain, it's always a combination between art and science. In entrepreneurship, the artistic part is seeing what others don't see, okay? But then my friend Steve Blank, who invented the whole startup lean startup movement, he likes to say, be careful, because sometimes you might mistake your vision is actually a hallucination. So there's a fine line between the two. That brings the scientific part in. You also need to constantly test your ideas. But the great entrepreneurs and great innovators, they balance between the two. They're not just the artists, okay? And they're not just the scientists. They navigate between the two. And that is a process we can learn. And I think we sometimes tend to overestimate, oh no, you're born as an entrepreneur. No, you're not. You can learn it. Now, of course, think Roger Federer, not everybody can be as good as the world's best tennis player. so much to the Rafa Nadal fans. Yeah. Roger Federer is an amazing tennis player. I would say, you know, best in the world, long track record, but it's a lot of, you know, stamina and training, etc., that comes in addition to the talent. So again, same thing in entrepreneurship. Not everybody is going to be a Steve Jobs, Elon Musk or so, but you know, you can learn and get there. And if you really work hard, some of them will actually get there because they apply those skills in this profession. So I'm very optimistic that we can all get a lot better at innovation and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What you're saying is super powerful, and I cannot agree more. And one of the points, I mean, you brought up so many great points. We could talk for hours. I'm getting very excited here. But one of the things that I really love what you said is also this whole concept, you know, with exploration and exploitation, also in a sense of co-creation, right? I mean, a lot of the startups that I'm currently talking to that are saying we don't know what to do, it's also maybe you need to reach out right now and see how you can help, or maybe people can help you, right? So there's some amazing startups out there right now. They have like kind of like this David and Goliath situation where they actually go out to large companies and say, let us help you with your business model, or with, you know, what it is that you're currently building, because we're lean and agile and we can actually help you with this. And there's a lot that can be done there as well.
I do agree, but I'm also cautious because not that many corporations are fast and agile enough to really embrace, you know, working with startups. So I've seen too many startups bleed out working with large corporations. So you have to do it, you know, with care. Mm-hmm. The principle of hope doesn't work. You have to be extremely pragmatic and expect the worst and see, you know, okay, what is your burn rate? And, you know, can I afford working with this huge giant that is working at a much slower speed? So I think that's great. And I think that's required, in particular in, you know, the whole sustainability movement. There are startups that can't have an impact if they try to do it alone because they won't scale fast enough. However, you also need to approach this with care, because I've seen too many startups bleed out working with the larger corporations. So this is an emerging domain. I think the bigger companies are only learning how to work with startups without bleeding them out, right? Because otherwise they'll become the vampires that start sucking the blood out of the startups. They will go on, right?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And that's exactly what I'm telling them as well. I mean, of course, you have to handle it with care, and, you know, you don't burn your finger on your fingers on the hot plate, and only go for as much as you actually can. But in many cases, it can also be advice or many different things that can help inspire as well. I would love to talk a little bit more about, you know, because you're working with so many different companies, to the extent that you can share, because you obviously also write about it in your book. What companies do you see, or maybe even industries do you see that are currently doing this really well? The work that you're talking about.
So I'll give you one example of a company that does one part really well. And this applies to small companies as well, less to startups, but I'll share something that's extremely important by quickly drawing it. So let's do this little drawing. How many ideas, how many projects do I need to invest $100,000 in, 100K, in order to create, how many $100,000 projects to create one mega success? Let's say, you know, Nestle trying to create another Nespresso. How many projects would I need to invest in? So in the book, you might have seen the answer. I talk about it quite often in the social media. To create one outlier, one huge success, we actually need to invest in 250 projects, okay? And only one out of 250 will become a mega success. So how do I know that? Well, that's the data from early stage venture capital, okay? To create one, we need to invest in 250. Now, obviously the startup, the smaller companies will say, but that's impossible, right? We're small. Yeah, but you're not looking for $1 billion return immediately, right? So it actually could be 5 to 1, or even 10 to 1, 5 to 1, something like that, but you can't pick the winner. That's the lesson to take away. And the bigger the success, the more you have uncertainty, the more projects you need to invest in. But here's the thing. You obviously won't invest huge amounts of money in many ideas. So the principle here, and I'll use a case that we illustrate in the book, Bosch, a German engineering company, huge, over 400,000 employees. Uwe Kirchner, who launched their accelerator program, over 3 years, they invested 120,000 euro in 200 teams over 3 years, okay? But they only give them 120,000 euro and they only give them 3 months, okay? 3 months. What happens after 3 months is they only invest in 30% of the teams. And they don't just choose, they actually invest in those teams that bring evidence to the tables. Remember that drawing? Those that reduce risk and uncertainty. And in this case, mostly desirability risk. That does mean they kill 70%, right? Rest in peace. And that's okay because they tell them why. And it turns out the teams even accept it. And there's 90% overlap between the teams that ask for more investment and what the accelerator thinks is worth more investment. So they know what they need to bring to the table. And then here they get 300,000 euro because now you're doing maybe more sophisticated experiments. Maybe you're building something, you get something like 6 months. And again, they kill 30%, or they keep 30%. So what they create here is a funnel. And in their case, over 3 years, they had 14 projects that came out. These are not multi-billion-dollar ideas, but they're good ideas that can go into the execution engine. But the principle here is you can't pick the winners. And that is the same for small, medium-sized companies. In Switzerland, in my region where I am, we have a company called Eurostar. They make irons, right? This is not a huge company, but they do the same, they have the same principle. They won't invest in 250, it'll be more around, 2 to 5 projects, but they know they can't pick the winner. They need to experiment. And if they're working on several and they kill, one after 3 months, they can focus. So it's the same idea. It's different for startups because as a startup, you need to be focused on one idea. But here's what you need to keep in mind. Think who has the portfolio in the startup. It's not the startup, it's the venture capitalist, right? So in a company, you might kill here, you kill here. In the real world, for a startup, it's the venture capital firms that don't give you follow-up investments. So that's the normal kind of path of entrepreneurship. You will have a lot of failures. And those entrepreneurs who do it 2, 3 times, they might succeed only the 3rd time. Or, they sell the first one for a small price to a company that's interested, but it's not a real success. And we just need to accept that. In entrepreneurship and innovation, you can't pivot yourself to success. Some ideas need to be killed. That's okay. It's not a problem, right? Yeah. This is something we tend to forget. And the lean startup movement maybe gave the false impression that you can pivot yourself to success. You can't. Some projects need to be killed, and that's okay, right? So you go to the next one. And Steve Blank himself is an interesting case. So he likes to tell the story that he was actually on the cover of a magazine, of Wired magazine, when his company, I think it was called Rocket Ship, something like that, it was a game company, went bankrupt, right? Busted. He was on the cover of the magazine. But here's the thing. The same investors invested in Steve Blank's next startup, and they got $1 billion return, right? So, one of the things that Steve likes to say is how we call, a failed entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. There are a lot of things we can criticize about Silicon Valley, but there's some good things. You know how you call a failed entrepreneur? Experienced. Yeah. So you actually, with your failures, you learn, because often you maybe just too early, you did something, the competitors were better financed, or it's okay to fail. And we don't have that culture enough yet. And the failure is never the goal. Failure always sucks, but it's part of the game. Yeah. You'll look stupid a lot of times. So entrepreneurs don't have a problem with that.
And it's the same in entrepreneurship as well, right? Failure is part of the game. And I love what you're saying. You know, if you're looking at failure as part of your learning, you can only win. And it's not about making stupid mistakes on purpose. I think nobody out there wants to do that. It's about actually trying your best and then really, you know, falling and then getting up, falling and getting up and learning and practicing.
But here's the thing, you know, that sometimes people say, Alex, you can't talk about failure and, you know, we don't want failure. It's about learning. And I say, no, it's not about learning either. It's about building new growth engines. But if we don't embrace the word failure and we just call it learning, people will always try to hide failure. So we actually need to cherish failure and say, this is part of the game. That's why this funnel will allow you to let the winners emerge and the failures will remain cheap. But we need to embrace it. And, you know, think of Jeff Bezos. He actually says to his shareholders, Amazon is the best place in the world to fail. Think of it. How many CEOs say that? So yes, we need to use the word failure. We need to embrace it. It's not the goal. It's always annoying, but it's part of the innovation game. You can't innovate big without investing in failure. And Jeff Bezos actually likes to say, you know, we need to scale the size of our failures with the size of our company. If we just do $50,000 failures, we're not going to create another Amazon Web Services, right? So you need to manage it, of course, but guess what? You need to kind of start multiplying the bets. So at Amazon, you always have thousands of experiments in parallel all the time. Many of those will fail. Some of them after a week, some of them after a month, some of them after 6 months. But that's exactly why they have these great winners emerge. It's not a coincidence. It's not creative genius. It's a system and a culture that they systematically put in place over the last 20 years. And this is what others tend to underestimate. You know, some leaders are still in the myth of the creative genius. Oh, I can pick the ideas, right? Or this is a great, you know, direction. Vision is easy. Hard is to turn an idea into a real value proposition, a real business model. And what you need to do that is build a portfolio. Venture capital knows that. Guess what? Corporations are figuring it out now. That's why Bosch is a beautiful example, because they're starting to put that in place. You know, Amazon has put it in place for a long time. Ping An is one of our favorite examples in the book. It's a finance and insurance conglomerate. They turned into a tech company in less than 10 years. They went from the top 400 companies in the world to the top 30.
You've given so much juicy information. I'm so grateful for your time and that you're giving all of this. And I think it's great. I can only repeat it. Anybody out there, you know, please buy this book, read it. It will definitely change your life in many different ways. Before we come to the end of the interview, I would like to ask you one last fun question. You know, obviously we have been in lockdown and you were talking about not traveling. What is it that you're looking forward to most as we are getting out of this lockdown situation?
What am I looking forward to most? So it's actually not traveling. I don't think it's traveling, but I do really look forward to going to the mountains a bit more and being able to stay, you know, also in the mountains, because right now I can go to the mountains for a day, but the hotels are closed. I'm not, you know, I'm not a big camper. So I'm looking forward to that, spending time in the Swiss Alps. So that I'm really looking forward to.
We have that in common, for sure. I will do the same. And I very much do hope that at some time in the near future, I'll get to see you in person again. That would be really awesome. And before we end, so I'm going to give away 5 of these books and support a little bit this great cause that this book is delivering.
It's the best work we've ever done. And it was, in German, we call it eine Zangengeburt. It was really hard work. It's a very visual book, right? You can see it behind me on the wall. So these are the spreads of the book. And I think what's nice, it's for entrepreneurs and for senior leaders of large organizations. There's a little bit of everybody, for everybody. It's probably 3 or 4 books in one. So I hope you get it and enjoy it.
I'm sure a lot of people will. Alex, thank you so much again. It's been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope to see you very soon.
Pleasure's mine. It's great to be here.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.